All right, so we're recording again. My name's Luke Angstadt. This is my podcast, Knowledge Wars. I am the author of a book called The Musings of De La Pew. It's a 20-year investigation into the nature of reality, the nature of God, existence, human beings, and the relationship between all of them. My podcast was previously titled The Business of Esoteric Knowledge and Wisdom, but I wanted to. So every once in a while, I get the urge to explain the name change again. But I kind of switched it over to Knowledge Wars because I think the business of esoteric knowledge and wisdom, with the focus being on esoteric knowledge, a hidden knowledge and wisdom that has been intentionally suppressed by various world governments and organized religions and secret societies over the centuries, was just too mysterious. I mean, a lot of people saw the title and said, "What the hell is that all about?" So I made a conscious effort to get to the point as quickly as possible. Knowledge wars. It's kind of and when you think of there's a pyramid of that is composed of data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, with data being on the bottom, where data is just raw data, words and numbers, and what do you do with it? And then information is kind of like it's organized data. So we're taking the not even information, we're taking the raw data and we're organizing it, and then by organizing it, it becomes information. And then above on the next level on this pyramid is knowledge, and knowledge is contextualized information, and it's information explained. So you're trying to make sense of the information. And then above, at the very top of that pyramid, I see wisdom as being at the top of that pyramid. And I'm not the originator of this pyramid. This has been around for quite some time. But at the very top of that pyramid is wisdom. And wisdom is what does a person do with knowledge? I mean, I do believe you can teach knowledge, but I don't think you can teach wisdom. I mean, that is up to the individual to make what they will of wisdom. Excuse me, to make what they will of knowledge, and wisdom is what they do with that knowledge. But we are certainly in a war, and I think most people can see that. I mean, more and more people are. I mean, I still find most people are very reticent to even admit it openly, but they know it. I mean, they see it. I mean, with the awkward moments of silence when we try to broach this subject with people that are still too uncomfortable to talk about what's going on in the world, we can see that people that even that if they can't admit it to themselves, they know it, and they give you like a silent acknowledgement. And that's kind of like a little bit of a breakdown of why I switched the title over from The Business of Esoteric Knowledge and Wisdom to Knowledge Wars. And Bob, I think we see a great example of this. You sent me a link yesterday about all these cows that are dying by you said. I saw the story. You said 2,000 on CNN, which I always check CNN to see what my enemy's up to, but you informed me that it's 10,000, and I believe that. And what this just kind of ties into with what the chicken farm that burned down recently, and it's not just one. I mean, it's what I mean. I saw a list of upwards of at least 100, and my number may even be a very conservative number, but it's all synchronistically falling into place with the outrageous gas prices, the food shortage that has been artificially manipulated, and we see a concerted effort to destroy our food source. And I saw the image of all of the whole field of cows, tits up, and now our overlords are trying to frame this as just being an unfortunate result of global warming. So what are your thoughts on this, Bob?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't catch that article in regards to global warming. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
They blamed it on what I read. They blamed it on the heat. And so my first reaction is, and I'm no farmer, I know a few, and I've reached out to them, right, to hear their opinion, because everybody has their opinion. But I mean, it's been hot before, right? And
Yeah.
so I always go back to, because when you get on this train of thought, like they're out to get us, so to speak, whatever, but you get what I'm saying.
Mhm.
That's the way you see everything. You can't
Yeah.
help it. Once you open that can of worms, that's where you go, by default. However, so part of me pulls back and says, well, hold on, maybe this happened last year. Maybe it's always happened, and now we're just paying attention more, right?
Mhm.
So, and I haven't had a chance, because this just, came to my attention yesterday. So I haven't had a chance to look into that part. Just like with the food facilities burning, people say, well, how many burned down last year? Maybe this is normal, right? So everybody tries to justify, and I do myself, right? Because you really hate to truly believe even though we do, that this is really happening, right? You
Yeah.
think like, well, maybe it's not what we think, maybe. So yesterday, for example, I reached out to a farmer friend I know, and I said, hey, uh, they raise cows, and I said, what do you think they died from the heat or something else? She said the heat, and that was it. But I've talked to her before about things, and she would say, about the chickens. Well, chickens really, in regards to the bird flu. So I guess my point with all this, just because you're a farmer, don't mean you're paying attention.
Mhm.
You could be paying attention to your own little farm and still thinking the world's a wonderful place. So just because I didn't, so I asked another farmer, and I'm going to continue to ask. I just sent a text this morning, and my buddy from Pennsylvania said he doesn't, he says he don't believe it. He doesn't know. He said, but it seems awful odd to him. And I know a local farmer who we just purchased a cow, and I'm going to talk with him as well to get professional opinion on, here's the thing, that's money, man, right? That's a farmer that lost his life, whether it's one farm or how many farms, it doesn't matter. But the one farm that they showed the video of was 3,000 cows.
Mhm.
I heard yesterday that they said because of the food cost and everything else, that it cost $8,000 to feed 50 cows for us to get them ready. So when you do the math, somebody just lost their livelihood, right?
Yeah.
That's and cow and ranching is tough business anyway, money
It is.
wise.
It's not, yeah.
They've always said that you can't hardly make it. So
Yeah.
you just got your whole year wiped out. You're done. You are
Yeah.
done.
You're done. Yeah.
So I guess my question would be, how do we find out who these people are who own these ranches? Let's hear from them. That's how I don't know. Once again, you don't know either,
Mhm.
but I want to get to the root. What do you say about this? How did this happen? How do you allow this to happen?
Mhm.
Right? It's hot. You're not, this is not your first rodeo. That's no pun intended, but and how do you, it's been hot before. How do you allow all your cows to die from heat exhaustion
Mhm.
at the same time?
And the play, and part of the play is the play on words. And like again, I checked CNN because I want to know what my enemy's up to. But they said that because the temperatures only dropped overnight, got down to 70 degrees, the temperature didn't sufficiently drop low enough to cool to cool the cows off. Well, 70 degrees at night in Oklahoma or Texas is pretty freaking cool in the middle of
Yeah.
summer. I mean, 70 degrees overnight in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, is still cool over. So I mean, I remember we would go weeks where it wouldn't dip below 79 at night, but now all of a sudden, it only gets down to 70 degrees, and that's how they frame it. But they speak with the pretense of this is the final word, this is the authority, and oh my God, as if this was the first time we've ever had a heat spell where it didn't dip below 70 degrees. It's just insane. But if you sit there and you say it officiously, you frame your words officiously, and people will buy it. But it's just,
Yeah, and if you don't get off just like with everything else, if you don't get off your narrative, if you don't sway the least bit, it's like
Yeah.
you double down. You
Stay the
make it
course.
even crazier than it is.
Yeah, you just stay the course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. You double down. You just double down and you stick with it, because these people aren't going to back down from anything. They are nothing will stop these people. They have no conscience. They have no soul. There's nothing good in them.
Yeah.
And there is. And like you said before, you want to play devil's advocate because you don't want to believe it. But once you see it, and then you mentioned about when you really saw it after the first lockdowns in March of 2020, you're like, once you can't unsee it, right? I mean, once you start seeing it everywhere, because it is everywhere. I mean, this plan is a global concerted effort for one world government, one world order, where the entire world is marching to the dictates. Every move that people make in their lives is according to the dictates of a one world government, and you start seeing it because that is what we are up against. That is the war that we are up against.
And right when I forget who, I mean, I'm sure and I'm sure more than one person suggested it, but they said when the COVID narrative is over, they said it will be global warming. And when I heard it, we're talking a year ago when everything sort of, when things sort of just started to, like, I'm not saying go our way, because nothing's going our way, to be honest, but like, it seemed like, okay, this is not going to last forever. What are they going to do next? And people said it will be global warming. And I'm like, well, how the hell is that going to work? Right. Like, but here's how it's working, right? They're engineering things to, and people, I don't know if you catch it every now and then, people are dying from global warming. Do you catch any of those articles?
No. From what?
Yeah. Well, it's like people will get their heart will stop beating, you wonder why that happened, right? And they'll say, oh, it's another cause from global warming, the heat, stress on people, blah, blah, blah. So they're taking it. And instead of just saying, like, how they always used to do it, it's not even global warming, climate change. Sorry for saying global warming, because they had to change the name, right? Just like
Yeah, they used to,
monkeypox.
yeah, they used to
Change the name.
they had to switch it over to climate change because they couldn't convincingly argue for global warming anymore. So, and Bob, this reminds me, like when I was a kid, back in like the early 90s, I remember having, blizzard after blizzard after blizzard. I don't know if you remember this too, but like I remember like the winter of 93 and the winter of 96. I remember trudging through 3 feet of snow on more than 2 or 3 occasions. And
Yes.
I also remember being a kid playing Little League Baseball in like 92, 90, 91 in the early 90s, where I remember driving by the bank when I was a kid, seeing the thermostat say 105, and nobody was screaming the end of the world via global warming or climate change at that time. I mean, we've all, I mean, now if you get 6 inches of snow in the winter, it's the beckoning of the apocalypse is coming just from 6 inches of snow. I mean, this was routine, the blizzards, even 30 years ago. So, but yeah, I mean, what they did is they allowed people to take a break from the COVID narrative. I mean, they allowed people to catch their breath, and we can even feel it might be a week here and there or 2 weeks in there, and then the next thing you know, it's the global warming, it's the climate change push again. It's all these.
Well, it's something, because I could have my dates mixed up, but as I recall, here anyway in Charlotte, and I think it was probably nationwide as well, the day, and you correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't think I'm wrong, the day that I'm talking about George Floyd. So something happened. I think it was like, okay, we're gonna open up the economy again or something. I think that's how it went. I think they were like, 2 weeks, and then it was Easter, blah, blah, blah. But then they finally said, okay, that same freaking week, George Floyd starts and all the riots start. Mm-hmm. And if we were to graph stuff out, you would see that ever since this started in 2020 of January, it's been nonstop with a few little breaks in between, not all COVID, but either a new outbreak, this, that, a tragedy, a mass shooting, the George Floyd thing, the riots, all that has been relentless, which is why it's wearing people out. You know what I mean? Because you can't get a break. So here we are, we're all relieved. Okay, we're finally getting back to normal, whatever people want to think about that. And then, we have an opinion on the George Floyd thing too. I'm sure it's ridiculous how that thing played out. You know what I mean? But it's done, and it is what it is. He's a martyr now, and we're probably gonna have a holiday next year or something like that. And but it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost. I mean, they almost. It's like I'm sure they have an algorithm somewhere that will determine how long people can be psychologically shocked and traumatized by a national event, whether it was the first lockdown, whether it's a shooting, the riots, and then once people start coming, once the biological system is over, it's initially shocked, it's overwhelmed, it goes into a state of trauma, and as it starts to dwindle, it's almost as if they have an algorithm that can determine how long of a grace period they can give people before they come with the next trauma, with the next tragedy, to maximize the effect of the next tragedy. Otherwise, if they made it too quickly in succession, it would just be a waste, because people's systems would be completely shocked, where there would be no measurable benefit to it, because people are still suffering from the last tragedy. It really is that diabolical. I mean, because we see it, it's almost like clockwork, right? I mean, when the next thing comes, I mean, when the monkeypox comes, and then they realize that it doesn't fit their narrative, so they have to come up with a different word track for monkeypox. I mean, it's just, they really have it. It's an art and a science what they're doing here.
Well, I think I've heard people saying, once again, we don't know, but I've heard people suggest the fact that, and this is when it even first started, people that I would listen to that were a little ahead of all this, probably like yourself, if I knew you back then, they said that AI figured this out. How, almost like, okay, I don't know how AI works exactly, but just say it's a computer. How do we take over human population? And AI works on this thing. Oh, here's what you do. And we're doing it, right? I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes sense.
Bob, it's a great point. You have been right on the money today all day, and you're absolutely right, because that's what they did. They wanted to determine, because even this globalist cabal that wants to take over, these people that that have been trying to take over the world, and they want to take over the world. I mean, that's what they want. They are they are just they want power and control for the sake of power control. And they want to rule the world, and they are doing everything they can. And even these people thought that maybe prior to March of 2020, before the lockdown, they had to ask themselves, I mean, will people fall for this? I mean, they thought that maybe this was they were biting off more than they could chew here, and that the gig would be up because people would see through it. But no, it was because they had all these computer models, based upon AI. We harken back to Event 201 in October of 2019, where all these people were the various globalist leaders and people like Bill Gates and George Soros of the world, and Jeff Bezos, I'm sure, and various world health leaders, met in October 2019 for Event 201 to run this simulation of, should the world be hit by a virus pandemic. I mean, how are all the world's governments going to globally coordinate? How are they globally coordinate to lock down and stem the spread of this virus? So, I mean, they ran this simulation in October of 2019. And again, to your point, they have AI models that were trying to determine if people's brains have been sufficiently turned to a sufficient mush where they to see if they would fall for this, right? Would they fall for this idea of we're going to lock down society to save society? I mean, on the face of it, it's obviously insane. I mean, again, I will be saying this until my dying days. I mean, the only reason you lock down society is to destroy society, and it's self-evident. And when they got away with that, and when I saw a 99% compliance rate with this, I just was in such a state of disbelief. I didn't know what to say or do, because I thought to myself, how can they get away with this? But Bob, you're absolutely right. They had AI models that they were trying to determine if people were sufficiently, if their brains have been turned to enough of a sufficient mush by decades of staring. I mean, not decades with a smartphone, but had the smartphone and their computers and movies gotten them to the point where they were so brainwashed that they would actually fall for this. Because you're absolutely right. AI plays an integral role.
And I would even say that I'm not 100% sure that it's not just basic fear. Even I mean, we can talk about all the things, the pre-programming and all that stuff, and I do agree with all that. But really, when it really comes down to it, when you stop and think about it, and you talk to people, intelligent people that you meet on the day-to-day basis that are still buying into this stuff, I see it as basic fear. Something happened, we believed it, and they're telling us how we can be safe now, and we want to be safe. And I had this discussion with my 22-year-old the other night about and he's in agreement, like he's young, but he pays attention, not like we do, but about the currency, the money system is over, it's crashing, right? So he's like, he said, I'm in a really good spot because I'm young. He said, if I was older, ready to retire, he goes, you're screwed. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm not, because I'm not ready to retire. But his point was interesting because, when I said, well, something's coming, we don't know what it is. I said, it's probably going to be a government run because, crypto's dumping right now. They're never going to allow that. The powers that be are never going to allow people to exchange crypto without them having control. It's not going to happen. It's a scam. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a scam. So whoever's in charge of that might believe in it, but the governments and the powers that be will never let that happen. No. And so I said, it's going to be a digital currency from, the world banks. And he was like, okay, so what? It's just like it is now. I said, it's not like it is now. I said, it's digital where you will have no control over. And he was like, well, it's progress. That's the way it goes. And I'm not really making my point. However this conversation started, I came to the conclusion that he agreed as well that people will take whatever so they can keep their creature comforts.
You're right.
Right? Yeah. Even though we know it's not good, but the alternative is for people like me and you to almost lose your freaking mind, arguing with people, fighting with people, stepping outside of the matrix, so to speak, and trying to do something completely different. Or you go along to get along and you live happily ever after, you think. And so, when I told him that if that happens, I said, look at China. He said, we're not China, Dad. We're not China. And he thinks like that stuff can never happen here still. And I get it. He's 22 years old, right? So I pull back, like I've told you, I try to pull back. But for the most part, I do think it's begins with fear, and it begins with, I just want to be left alone. And what do I have to do so you leave me alone? Because the stuff that you and I are doing and talking about, and a lot of people are doing, it's not comfortable. It's
No.
it's pretty uncomfortable. And but we know that it's right. And I think the idea is, I don't know if I told you this, one of the guys came into a food rep came into my shop the other day, and he told me and my wife that him and his wife were pregnant. The guy's like maybe 30 years old.
Mhm.
And we're like, oh, congratulations. He said, yeah, 10 weeks. We feel good about telling people. He said, we had 4 miscarriages. And I said, wow, dude, 4 miscarriages. I said, over the past couple of years. He goes, no. He goes, this year. He's
Wow.
vaccinated. He's boosted. His wife is. I didn't say nothing, of course, but I've argued with this guy relentlessly through this whole process. And I finally given up, right? So I say, whatever, Max, and I let him go. But it hit me afterwards. Like when he said that, I didn't say anything to him. Obviously, I'm not going to say nothing. But later that day, it really hit me why I would have these arguments with him before, right? Yell at him. And it wasn't that I had, like, people think, oh, you just want to prove yourself right. You're crazy. It's not that. I see what's coming. And unfortunately, it's here. And now I feel sad for you. And I feel really bad for you. And I said, but I don't say this to anybody. I think I probably told my wife, but I screamed at him because I wanted him to wake up. But now he's here and he thinks he's out of the woods. We have 10 weeks. And he thinks he's fine.
Mhm.
And he might be, and I hope he is fine. But statistics will say he's not fine.
Yeah.
They're not fine.
Yeah.
And the baby, like it's tragic what's happening to infants in the womb now, because people that are vaccinated and boosted. And I'm sure they'll go, and the next thing that comes, I'm sure they'll both line up for it. His wife could be 5 months pregnant, and if something happens, they'll take another injection. I mean, but it's mind blowing, but it's saddening at the same time. Because I just like people, and so probably like yourself. So the point is, why I engage with people is because I don't want to see what's happening, even to a stranger, even to a stray dog or cat. You just have compassion for people, and it's like, you guys do not see what's happening, and when it starts to happen, it's too late. And it just breaks my heart, you know what I mean? And so it really hit me that it's like the reason that I do engage with people and get passionate is because I don't want to see bad things happen to good people. And most people are good people. They've just been
clueless. They're clueless. But I mean, it gets to a point where being clueless is no longer going to be it's no longer an excuse. I mean, and it comes. I mean, because I know they're brainwashed. I know the average person spends their entire lives, every impulse, every behavior, everything that they do is a input output from government brainwashing. I mean, it's relentless. I mean, it's every facet of their life, all of their behavior, everything that they perceive as their thoughts and opinions, it is shaped and molded by brainwashing. And you're trying to crack that nut, but that is a hard nut to crack, because this program has been in place for hundreds of years. Even I mean, it really has been in place for hundreds of years. And this global conspiracy has been this global conspiracy and plot for the control of the world has been in place for actually centuries. And it's a question of how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? I mean, how far down do we want to go with ancient astronauts? How far do we want to go down with the Sumerian cuneiform tablets and the story that they told, where either there was a visitation 4,000 years ago by ancient astronauts, or the Sumerians are the greatest science fiction writers of all time. So it really is a question of how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go with this program of power and control and this for the takeover of planet Earth. I mean, because this Earth, I mean, human beings, it's a slave farm. I mean, it's been a prison farm for centuries, and all people have to do is open their eyes. And once they see it, it harkens back to once you saw what happened on March of 2020, where you can't unsee it again. But once you first see that all of history is the story of this prison farm called the human race on planet Earth, you can't unsee it. I mean, all of history is just one long succession of wars and conflicts, and it's a matter of how many bodies can we stack up in this last war. I mean, that's pretty much what history. That's what history is. I mean, history is told by wars, by the the never-ending succession of wars. And once you start seeing it for what it is, that that this is a prison farm. That's what we're at. And now, especially since March of 2020, the prison
Yeah.
farm is staring us, yeah.
And modern day, tell me what you think about this. I've thought about it obviously recently, is the fact that the globalists have used the United States of America to conquer the world,
Mm-hmm.
and now turn on us because you can't try to take over the world just whatever by yourself or
Mm-hmm.
so they controlled, and I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, that's for sure, but the way I see it now, especially with all these bioweapons labs popping up or not popping up, being exposed like
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine, and that's still like we still wonder what's going on over there. But one thing I heard recently, it was yesterday, and didn't look into it, but a podcast I listened to, he just mentioned it, and he said something to think about and look into. That is in Nicaragua. The Russians are there. They allowed the Russians to come to Nicaragua with tanks and
Mhm.
troops. And this guy said it's because there are bioweapons labs there and they want them gone. So when you stop and think about it, and I do believe this because I've seen enough evidence to show that we have these bioweapons labs all over the world,
Mhm.
and we're using them to carry out our dirty work. But we're the good guys. We're the United States of America. We're never going to hurt anybody. We're using it for the protection of everyone else, just in case the bad guys we're going to be the better of the bad guys.
Mhm.
But now that we're exposed, so if this is true, think about it for a second. Nicaragua, which is not that far from the southern border,
Mhm.
if the Russians are there with artillery and weapons and tanks and people, all to uncover US bioweapon. If it's true, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it could be, and it probably is. Think about the repercussions of that. So
Mhm.
on the bright side of that, I think that my opinion anyway is that's a good thing, right? That we have to uncover all this shit. Whatever pain it costs this country or the people, it has to be undone somehow.
Mhm.
And if it seems to me, which is crazy, but that is how it would work. Everything is flipped upside down and they twist people's minds so they don't believe it. It seems to me at this point that the Russians are the good guys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's
Doesn't it?
part of me thinks that. I mean, but you can, part of me sees that too. Also, I mean, I know Russians that have come to the United States after living under the Soviet Union, and they would definitely sing a different tune. I mean, I mean, the whole reason they left Russia is because the only reason they left Soviet Union is because they were living in a lockdown fascist society where you could not speak out against your government without an in-your-face threat to your life. I mean, I mean, Russia. I hear you on that, Bob, but I mean, it's such a long, complicated, convoluted issue over there, and we know that what we are being fed in the United States is complete bullshit, because everything our government tells us is complete bullshit, and harkens back to, if you tell a lie big enough, and that we are the good guys, we are the peacekeepers, and we are the police of the world, and we're just here to keep we have everyone's best interest in mind, and we're just making sure everybody is behaving themselves and playing by the rules. If you tell a lie big enough, that's what it comes down to. If you were bold enough to tell the biggest whopper of a lie imaginable, people will go along with it because they say to themselves, they can't be lying to that extent. I mean, nobody lies like that. I mean, but they do. And we see it. We just see it. I mean, it's the track record. And when has the government ever told the truth? Never. And every person knows that. I mean, the most brainwashed human being knows that the government never tells the truth. But every time a new crisis, a new manufactured crisis is laid at their doorstep, they believe it. They go along with it. I mean, that's that reptilian reactive brain where that knee-jerk reaction is to trust the government. And it's amazing. It's just amazing how the game works.
Yeah, that we are. And I take it back. I'm not saying Russia's the good guys, but I'm not.
No, I
but
hear you.
I just don't. I don't think that it's what it appears.
No, it isn't. It isn't what it. No, it's nothing like it appears, and it's.
And I think it could be as simple, not simple, nothing simple in this thing, but it could be as simple as, Russia's like, hey, I'm tired of you fuckers, United States of America, bossing everybody around, doing all your shit, acting like you're the good guys, and we're tired of it. So we're gonna we're the bad guys too, but we're gonna expose you for what you're doing and quit blaming the rest of the world for the shit that you're doing to the world. I mean, just go back to Iraq and all that stuff with 9/11. I mean, that stuff makes no sense whatsoever. What we did after 9/11, like all of a sudden there was this axis of evil that came out of nowhere that we have to go over there and destroy them. I mean, okay, some Saudi Arabian guys destroyed the Twin Towers. If whatever we want to think about that, if that's the narrative, and what are we doing in Iraq? What are we doing all over? What is going on here, right? But yet people believed it. And then when it was proven, oh, we made a mistake. Oh, we made a mistake. Move on to the next one. And that was brought up recently in one of the hearings for the UN with Russia. The guy said he was sitting in the UN hearing, and he said about Iran. The United States can do that. They can go destroy a country, say because there's weapons of mass destruction, and then when there are no weapons, everybody just moves on. How can the United States do that and get away with that? And now you're blaming us for shit. We didn't do nothing, right? But so there, I think the rest of the world is sick of it. They're sick of it, and they see weakness now. However, we want to say how we got here, whatever. And I'm sure it's all whatever. But there's weakness in this country now, without a doubt. And so now it's game on, right? We're going to do what we want to do, and it all comes down to the money. I don't know if you listened to the thing I sent you the other day from Edward Dowd.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. He says, and I believe it too, because I believe in the beginning, it's all a smokescreen because the financial system is collapsing. It's collapsing no matter what, not because it was coming, and we have to have a way to explain why this is happening. And I would almost bet money when the story is told, it will still all connect back to COVID. We tried our best, but COVID came, and then this came, and that came, and so here we are. But there's no fault of ours, and we're here to help. Back to the whole thing.
Hey, and with regards to 9/11, I mean, there are two books that I would recommend to anyone by David Icke. One is called Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Disaster, written in 2002. So just afterwards. And then the other title is The Trigger, which I think came out in like 2019. The Trigger is like 1,000 pages long. The Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Disaster from 2002 is about 500 pages long. So over the course of 1,500 pages, he assembles, evidence by evidence upon evidence upon evidence upon evidence. I mean, he connects the entire bread trail behind 9/11. And what we see is it's an inarguable. It was 9/11 prior to the lockdown of March of 2020. 9/11 was the greatest false flag operation in the history of the world. I mean, the axis of evil is the United States, Great Britain, and Israel, and the official story makes no sense whatsoever because it's complete bullshit. It is complete bullshit. And like I said, it comes back to people cannot even begin. They don't even want to begin to imagine that the United States government was behind 9/11. But when you see the mountain of evidence, the alternative is laughable. Just the idea that the FBI and CIA did not have a single shred of evidence that there was a global terrorist network that was planning an attack on the United States prior to 9/11, but within 24 hours later, they had this entire globalist terrorist network mapped out that was masterminded by Osama bin Laden, and they had the names of all the 19 jihadists that were on those planes. I mean, but within 24, they had this entire thing, and they were the game plan ready to go. This war on
by
terror.
The end of the day, yeah. By the end of the day.
By the end of the day.
Maybe that afternoon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. But prior to the attacks, they didn't have a single shred of evidence that any of this was in the offing. Right. I mean, it's just laughable. But again, you tell lies, you tell whoppers big enough, people will believe it. They will fall for it.
Interesting though.
Go ahead.
Let me know what you think about this, because people who did not live 9/11, like say my kids or my nephews or whatever, didn't witness it.
Yeah.
They don't believe it.
Oh, they don't believe it. Yeah. They don't believe that it actually happened, or they don't believe
they don't think it happened like they say, because they're seeing it with different eyes, right? They didn't get the stress, and I see we're running out of time. They didn't get the stress of it all in their face, that image of the plane hitting the building over and over and over and over, all that stuff. They were basically, it's history to them. And so they look at the history of it and they're thinking like, this makes no sense. You know what I mean? But the average young person doesn't buy it. But the average person who lived through it, you can't convince them of anything else.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you really can't. It's a shame. Yeah.
So that would prove your point to the the programming and the brainwashing, how the brain works. If you like, so the idea would be like the younger generation never believed a lie, right? They're presented with this case right now with clear eyes. No, nothing's happening. We're not being bombarded with information. Look at this and tell me what you think. Oh, it's bullshit. But the person who, and like we said, it's how do we get these people to believe things?
And at this point, Bob, I think they could be lying in the streets, bleeding to death after the revolution came through, and they still won't know what hit them. I think that we're at that point, and I hate to admit that to myself, because it's even unthinkable even for me, and that's why I'm doing everything I can to still wake people up. But I think that's what it's going to take. I think it's inevitable at this point, and I'm kind of preparing for. I'm preparing for the worst. I'm making preparations for the worst, because
we need to.
We have to. Yeah, I mean, you'd be a fool not to. Yeah,
well, I mean, just look around and talk to the average person. Like,
yeah,
they're
they're still not waking up. 85% of people aren't waking up. They're not,
Right.
and you know it, right? I mean, you know it. You try and have these conversations, and they shut you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the plus side, it doesn't take 80%, right?
No, it doesn't. No, revolutions that have been.
That's why we still do what we do, and we're still hopeful, because
Yeah.
all it takes is enough people with a backbone and a spine to move forward, especially when things start going really shitty. That's when the masses are going to be like, like Albert, who we're going to get on the show. Like he always says, and he's just like we are, struggles with the same stuff that we do. Is there's going to be a time when they're going to look to him saying, tell us what to do.
Yeah.
Help us.
Yeah.
You've been right. And not that we want to be right, but they see that he sees.
There's going to come a point where their survival instinct overweighs their denial instinct.
Yeah, it has to.
It's going to have to. Yeah, it's going to have to. So,
yeah.
All right, Bob, I think this might be a good place for us to wrap up the conversation today and continue it next week. How do you feel about that? Yeah. So, all right, Bob. Hey, you have a great weekend, and we will be in touch, and we will reconvene next week sometime.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, Bob. You have a good one. I'll see you.
You too. Have a good.
Bye-bye.